Blair here. Short little video on Living Tribunal. It dropped last night. I played it in a bunch of different decks, and I'm going to let you know what I think of this card. First of all, there was a bunch of decks that I was really excited about trying the Living Tribunal in. I was really excited about trying him in a Panther deck. I was really excited to try him perhaps in a Death deck, Control, High Evolutionary, and then, Helidoc, Ongoing, and Lockjaw decks were really kind of things that I wanted to try. I tried a Mr. Negative. I'll get into him in a second, but let me break down what works, what doesn't work, and really why. Now, first of all, I was really excited about the Black Panther build. You're basically going Wong into Black Panther into Zola, and if you could split that power, that just that natural power that comes from that, Living Tribunal would be great. But then how do you get Living Tribunal out? That is the big question. And then it's going to be the question that's going to really kind of plague us throughout the course of this. Now, there was a lot of decks I saw that will play Wave and play Electro. Okay, well, you get those out on 3. Okay, but then you have to go 3 into Electro or 3 into Wave, and then you got to go, okay, well, Living Tribunal, and then, Wong, and then Black Panther, I can't split him. You just don't have enough turns to do this. Even the only way I figured out how to do it was Psylocke on 2, Wong on 3, Black Panther on 4. Again, this is presuming you have the extra cubes after the Psylocke, and then you go Living Tribunal, and then Armanzola. There's just not enough turns for it to work. It doesn't really work. You end up having to do half of it. Rather, you don't do Wong, and it's just Panther, Zola, Living Tribunal. There's just so many factors here that makes it so it just doesn't work. It's not good enough. Now, unless you bring rather Tribunal or Zola or someone else's cost down, at that point it might work. And trust me, if I see that, I'm going to revisit the Panther idea because I actually think the Panther deck would be the best version of it. But currently, that's not the case. I wanted to work it into Death, so that you can have a lot of Death going on, and then you play Tribunal. Honestly, I think Tribunal will work great in like a Destroyer kind of setup. But again, you have Destroyer and Tribunal at the same level. Could you find something there? Yeah, probably. You could ramp up a little bit, destroy a bunch of little cards or mid-range cards perhaps, and then bring out the Tribunal to split. But then you're wiping out a lot of your power for the Tribunal to actually split. It's like, whoa, what about Galactus? Well, Galactus is blowing up all the lanes. There's no point in splitting. There's cards that can give a null power, but then again, you need to get your null down. You got to get your Living Tribunal down, and they're both 6-cost cards. So you need ramp, and there's just a lot of moving parts. Control doesn't work, at least for everything I try. And the simple reason why Control doesn't work for me is there's just not enough power. Generally, Control decks are throwing a Professor X down on a lane where you have just enough to beat them. Or, you're ahead by 3 or ahead by 4 or 5. You're generally not wanting to have a big spread of power when you're dropping Professor X because you need that power outside the Professor X lane to win those other lanes. When you get Tribunal in the mix, you're actually adding some of that power into that Professor X lane that you don't need it. It's not necessary. And it ends up taking away from the other sites where you do need it. So for me, Control doesn't really work. I did a high Evo Living Tribunal mix, and it had some moderate success, but the reality of it, again, is that you'd rather drop Hulk on 6 than Living Tribunal. The Living Tribunal can come out on 4, where I'm like, well, do I play Thing? Do I play Cyclops, or do I play Living Tribunal? I might be able to make that decision to go with the Tribunal at that moment. But right now, where I'm choosing between Hulk, which could be a 622 versus a Living Tribunal, I'm playing the Hulk. I'm playing the Hulk 99% of the time. Again, you need that power for the Tribunal anyway. If you had a little bit of ramp in there, it might help. So you can maybe go Tribunal on 5 and then Hulk on 6, or play Magic, so play Tribunal on 6 and Magic Hulk on the 7. Magic seems to be a card that I think you would need to play for this to work. The Panther variant, you can think of also playing Magic. That would be another thing, but then again, you're pulling out another card from that archetype that doesn't really work. Now, some decks I did find that had moderate success with was what I call Helidoc, or the Modoc into Hela variants. You're generally hiding them behind an Invisible Woman, or if you happen to get them on tempo, you can play Hela Modoc to knock out your cards, and then on your turn 6, you're playing Hela to then bring them all back. With Living Tribunal, you can then get that massive amount of power evenly distributed. Now, I found this to be both positive and negative. Obviously, the even distribution could be something that better benefits you because you are dropping an enormous amount of power with that kind of deck archetype. But I found the one time in 20 games that I was able to pull off the combo with the Living Tribunal involved, it put 29 power across all 3 sites, and I lost the site. There was one that was a 52 because of Iron Man, but they all evened out. 29, and I lost 2 of the 3 sites. Now, I ran into a big deck. I'll be honest with you. Usually 29 on 3 sites, that wins the day. But in that specific instance, it didn't. And the reason being is I didn't really get to sit there and say, all right, I'm controlling the lane where I'm doing the Visible Woman, the MODOK, and the Hela. And I know I might not win that lane, or I'm looking to see that they're weak in that lane. So anything hits here, I'm going to win this lane. I kind of preferred it the old way. It works in that deck if you like the more consistent power spread, but I'm someone who likes to kind of have a little bit of the chance on one site being bigger than the other. I won more than 1 games with that. So anyway, my 2 cents, but does it work in that deck? Yeah, it does. It also works really well in Lockjaw or any sort of casino kind of deck. If you can bring out Living Tribunal as a casino kind of situation, like you're talking Jubilee, Lockjaw, anything that pulls a card from your deck, he works. And he works really well. You don't ever want to spend 6 cubes to bring out Living Tribunal. You want him coming out for free, or coming out with a ramp, or coming out in some other ways. Lockjaw, this worked really well, and I had some good success using him in the Lockjaw variant. If Janejaw specifically is what I'm playing, I would love to do this with a Thanos. I don't have Thanos. When I get Thanos, he's pinned in my store, I'm going to be trying it out again to see how he plays out. Frankly, I think it's going to be good. If you like playing Janejaw, Lockjaw, Tribunal might be a card you want to pick up. And where I found him worked best was the ongoing. The way that I was structuring it is that I would throw down an Invisible Woman, and behind the Invisible Woman, I would hide Iron Man and Onslaught. And then I'd rather have Living Tribunal there, or I throw him off to the side, and just something else with power to really give you that one big site. And then you can spread it out. I had really good success with that. However, it is easily stopped with Enchantress or Cosmo. You throw in Cosmo, you block the Onslaught, you throw in Enchantress, you wipe out the Invisible Woman, you wipe out Iron Man, and you wipe out the Living Tribunal, if that's where you're hiding him. So it is a high risk, high reward kind of scenario. If you pull it off, which I was able to pull it off on a few occasions, it kills because nobody sees it coming. But high risk, high reward. Just be prepared. Now, the one deck archetype that I saw the most decks on that people really thought was the best way to use Living Tribunal was Mr. Negative. From a conceptual standpoint, I agree with them. You can get down a 0-5 Iron Man with a 0-3 copying Mystique into a 0-3 Ironheart. A 1-4 Jubilee could bring something out of nowhere. You get the Tribunal in there. It could work. Problem is getting Mr. Negative out. The quickest anyone can get Mr. Negative out, unless you're casinoing him out, from what I've ever seen, is turn 3. So you can bring him out with Zabu on turn 3. You can bring him out with Jubilee on, a Zabu'd Jubilee on turn 3. You can bring him out with the Psylocke kind of situation, but there's always something that is needed to bring him out on turn 3. Why did you bring him out on turn 4 and you got 2 turns to play? Well, this is where I have the issue with Mr. Negative. The cards in your hand don't get the benefit. It's only the cards in your deck. So if you have, I guess Jane Foster, Lady Thor, you could pull out your zeros, but then you need to play her on 5. And now you got 1 turn with all your zeros that just you hope are in your deck and not in your hand. And then you can have a massive last turn where you can play Tribunal plus all of your zeros that have been flipped, and you could really do some massive damage. That is a lot of things lining up for it to work. Now, does it have the most potential? Absolutely has the most potential if you get Mr. Negative out. Mr. Negative, to me, is a deck archetype that fails more than it succeeds. In my personal experience, I've played 20, 30, 40 games with him maybe, and I've pulled Mr. Negative out before turn 5, maybe 10% of the time. It just doesn't work. Now, that could be just bad luck on my side, but frankly, I got to respect the data from my experience. And therefore, Mr. Negative is just not a deck archetype that I think really works. When he works, is he great? Absolutely. I already play a Helidoc deck that has that same sort of scenario, but I get a lot more value from that than I would a Mr. Negative deck. Now, wrapping this up as tightly in a bow as I possibly can, is this a card that you should be spending your 6K tokens on? No. No, absolutely not. You should be spending them on the High Evolutionary, you should be spending them on Thanos, you should be spending them on Iron Lad. I would wait Jeff until he 3K. I don't think Jeff's going to be 6K for too much longer. And it pains me to say this because I cannot stand this card. When you're ladder climbing Galactus, it also makes sense. 6K for Galactus. Galactus is the most annoying and the most prolific deck on a ladder climb. I can't stand it, but I understand why it's there. When you're infinite and you're playing Galactus, wow, then I'm questioning your sanity. But for ladder climb, that's a 6K card that I would spend my money on before Living Tribunal. If you're looking forward to next month, I don't know, maybe Spider-Man 2099 for the 6K. Frankly, I don't see any of those cards next month being worth 6K at all. But if you play the move archetype, maybe you do. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.